are continuing our sermon series about various practical things as we concluded the letter of Ephesians, and the next sermon series will be about Galatians, but this is on Galatians, and this is something to come later. But in the meantime, we're doing this series about different things, and today we're going to talk about finances. Actually, the topic is called Christian and Finances, or how to honor God with our financial resources. I am sorry because I went through a sickness earlier this week, and I'm still recovering. So if my voice breaks up, or if I cough, I'm sorry for that, because it may happen. I will drink some water as well, so please be patient with me. And I wanted to say that this is not a standard three-point sermon about a specific passage of the Bible text. It is more of a combination of a few things that we will cover in the limits of the subject we are covering today. And I just wanted to say right away that nothing in this sermon constitutes financial advice, because I'm not a financial advisor or something. But we are going to talk about different financial principles which are based on the Bible, on the Christian principles or biblical principles we find in the Bible. We are not going to talk exclusively about donations or giving, because we usually talk about that a couple of times a year, no more than that. And we're just going to talk about generally about finances. I'm the head of the finance committee here at the church, and our elders have asked me, thank you, Michael, where is Michael? He ran away. For kind of entrusting me this responsibility. By the way, my wife doesn't really like when I preach about finance, because she says not everyone likes such preachers. And this is probably understandable, especially if we talk about giving, or if we talk about different financial principles. So thank you, brothers, for throwing me under the bus. Anyways, let's open Proverbs chapter 3 and read two passages, or actually one passage to begin with, chapter 3, 9 to 10. And it says like this: honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all of your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. That's a very interesting passage, and I believe that's going to be the main one, because we're going to talk about how to honor God with our financial resources. I would say that wine would be the least thing we're going to touch today, and probably we won't talk about that at all, but we're going to talk about what God means by saying to honor Him with those things. And the main idea is that we should honor God with our financial resources. This is what we see in this passage. And the first aspect that we see in the Bible, when we look at the combination of various things that we study in the Bible, is that honoring God by budgeting and living within means. This is what we can do, honoring God by budgeting and living within our means. What is a budget, friends? What is a budget in simple words? If you can say. A budget, let me help you. A budget is a plan, because I know the answer, right? A budget, excuse me, please. A budget is a plan of our income and expense. So basically, it allows us, simply put, to understand how much we can spend, taking into consideration our income, how much we make. So with budget, knowing your income, you can plan your expenses. Or with a budget, you know how you can spend now, so that you know how you will live in the future. Again, it connects the present with the future. Budget is basically an instrument which allows us to take our present and look into the future. One may argue that planning is not actually a biblical concept because we should trust God. Have you heard about that? Have you seen that? Maybe it's not very popular nowadays, but I've heard that argument. And looking at biblical verses in that regard, usually those who support this idea, they quote this passage when Jesus said, "Look at the birds of the air; they neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they?" That's usually the main passage that supports this kind of thinking. However, this is taken out of context, because what actually Jesus talked about, if we read the chapter, what Jesus talked about was that people should trust God, meaning we shouldn't have anxiety about our future or how we will live. We should trust God. And when we trust God, that means that we have faith in Him, right? We entrust Him our future. We have faith in Him. However, when we read James, James says that faith is dead without works. Faith is dead without works. It means that if you believe in something, you should do something to support your faith, to support your beliefs. Because if you don't do anything, it won't happen. For example, I believe when I was young and I was dating with my future wife Tanya, I believed that she would tell me yes when I proposed her. However, I didn't just believe, I did something to achieve that, right? I was taking steps. I was dating her. I wanted to make sure that she loves me. I wanted that we become close. I made sure that we become closer. And one day, I proposed her, and she said yes. So this is how it works in our Christian life, in our financial life as well. When we believe something, we should do that. And this is exactly the case which comes to budgeting and planning, because this is the instrument which God gave us. And Bible says a lot about it, actually. When we open Luke chapter 14, Jesus said a very interesting example or a parable. He said, "For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, 'This man began to build and was not able to finish.'" So Jesus was clearly talking about budgeting and planning, and actually not just about budgeting, but the idea was to live within your means, to make sure that you can support yourself with your own income or your own resources. There is a saying which you might have heard, and it says, "Cut your coat according to your cloth." Have you heard it? It's not really popular, as I can see. The point is that you should live within your means. And if you are a tailor who was, doing or making coats, or if you are a tailor making your own coat, you should cut the length of your coat basically depending on how much of the cloth you have. That's kind of the origin of this saying. So it's not really popular today because everyone has or pretty much everyone uses credit cards, for example, and that's not really popular because it means that you can spend more than you actually earn, and you can borrow the money from the bank, and you will be able to enjoy something that you really want or you really want to get now. Have you heard about Dave Ramsey? Can you raise a hand if you heard this name before, Dave Ramsey? So this is for those who don't know, this is a Christian, a pretty wealthy Christian. I would say he's a real estate investor, and he's the one who founded Financial Peace University. He is a radio speaker, and he has a podcast. He has his own radio show. So I believe it's called the Ramsey Show now. And you are welcome to find it, and I think you will find a lot about biblical principle that he teaches. He's a big We actually had his classes, Financial Peace University classes in our church, maybe about 6 or 7 years ago. So maybe there will be an opportunity to do that again sometime in the future. He is a huge opponent of debt and a big proponent of budgeting. He also offers a budgeting app that you can download and you can use. There are, by the way, there is a multitude of such apps that you can download from Apple Store, right? Or App Store, and from Play Market, whatever. You can use those tools to budget your finance and live without your means. So to summarize, let's talk about practical things. 5 practical things under this aspect. So there are 2 ways to live up to your budget. This is to increase your income or reduce your expenses. Number 2 would be start with reducing your expenses, because no income will be enough if you don't control your expenses. Regardless how much you make, you will just be spending more. Principle number 3, or step number 3, cut your coat according to your cloth. Don't buy something if you can't afford it, simply put. I will stop here a little bit, because when we came to the States and we came as refugees, we didn't have a lot. We, of course, had some money which I earned before, or we earned before. And when my family came to the States back in 2015, we had to start, afresh, basically from nothing. And probably those of you who are refugees or who went through this process, you know what I'm talking about. And we were grateful, and we are still very grateful to those people who supported us at the very beginning, because we got furniture, we got a couch, we got beds, we got even silverware for us, and pans, and different things that you need to use in your everyday life. And this is everything was just donated to us by our church members, by those who wanted to help us when we came over here, because I can imagine that if we bought everything, if we had to purchase everything, that would be a lot of money. And we didn't care about, whether it's in fashion now, whether it's something that fits our style or it doesn't fit. We were grateful because we just needed it. We needed to use it, and we're still so grateful to those people who supported us. I think goodwill, you know what goodwill is, right? Or goodwill, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. I heard different things, but goodwill was our will, and it still is. Burlington, Marshalls, Ross, my favorite stores. And I once heard a preacher in our church who mentioned Burlington in a negative sense, and I was really insulted. I was like, how dare you speak so bad about this store, because it's so good, a lot of discount clothes that you can buy there. At the same time, I worked about 50 to 60 hours a week on average, and at the same time doing ministry at the church, and we already had 3 children at the time. And now we have 4, but at the time we had 3. And I don't know how, but God kind of helped us slowly kind of like get up on our feet. And probably in 3 to 4 years, we were able to gather enough for a down payment to buy a house. And this is just when I believe we applied the principle that we're talking about, what God tells us to do, or what He kind of offers us to do through the principles we see in the Bible. Principle number 4 here is be humble to move up or down. And actually, everyone can move up, but very few can voluntarily move down. What I mean here is that it's very convenient, it's very comfortable and natural to go to the next level. For example, to improve your living conditions, from going from a small apartment to a bigger apartment or bigger house, for example, buy a better car, to start making a bigger salary. Everyone can do this, right? I mean, everyone would agree with that. But very few would agree, to say, I can't really afford this, so I have to move from this house to an apartment. Actually, when we came to the States, we rented a big house because we didn't really have much of choice, and also we didn't understand how much we have to live off a month. So I got a job, and I very quickly realized that I was paying off someone's mortgage, not my own, but someone else. And we basically had to spend everything I was making to just kind of live a month, let's say, that period of time. So very quickly we realized that we need to downgrade, and we moved from that spacious house to a small apartment. And then in a year, the apartment complex had a pretty interesting and smart strategy. They kind of were offering low rates, and then in a year, when you moved in, when you brought all your stuff in, they would raise the rent significantly. So in a year, we got a 20% increase. And they were thinking that because we're on the third floor, and we have a little kid, infant at the time, we probably won't be kind of moving. It's better to stay. Doesn't work with us. So we decided to downsize again, and we moved to an old duplex, and we stayed there until we were able to afford to buy a house. So this is just this example, or these principles that we see in the Bible. And the last one is use 70-30 rule. What is that? And this is one I heard from financial consultants, because, and even those who are not really believers, who don't really follow Christian rules or principles, they say that live off of 70% of your income, and the remaining 30 is 10% giving, 10% paying off debt, and 10% investing. And when I heard that for the first time, I was like, they are not really Christians. They are not really following God. But even those people are talking about giving. Even those people are talking about biblical principles, because this is what God actually put in the Bible as the common sense for financial well-being. Friends, another aspect that we see how we can honor God by our financial resources is we can do it by avoiding debt and financial traps. This is the second aspect, because God made it very clear in His Word that debt is bad. It is not bad, it is very bad. Because we see a lot of places in the Bible, a lot of texts in the Bible, which clearly say that debt is something against God's will. Actually, when His people were moving from Egypt into the promised land, one of the blessings that God promised them was that if you follow my rules, you won't be borrowing money. You will be lending money to others, because that's going to be your blessing if you follow those rules. And in Romans, Apostle Paul actually advises to owe nothing to anyone except what? Except love. Thank you, Rob. By the way, glad to see you today. So it is so interesting that Apostle Paul says that live your life in the way that you don't owe anything to other people except for love. Because love is never enough. Love is something that we should show all the time. And when we read Proverbs 22:7, it says, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender. The borrower is the slave of the lender. Have you guys heard about such a plastic card that's called MasterCard? We probably will see it on the screen for those who don't know that, right? What does it mean? What does it mean? I don't know what actually those people who created it meant, but to me it tells that someone is a slave. Right? Someone is a master and someone is a slave, and this is a biblical principle here, and it clearly says that the borrower is a slave of the lender, those who lends money. If you want to live by God's word, be wise and try to avoid debt. Speaking about debt, I think credit cards represent the biggest challenge and the most significant risk and traps. You probably heard or you saw those rules if you signed up for a credit card. By the way, who has a credit card? At least one. Oh, pretty much everyone. And thank you for those who are so humble that you didn't even raise a hand, but we know you're using it, right? So it is something that usually comes with a hefty interest rate or APR, and when you read that fine print, usually it says that your interest rate is 24% or 35% sometimes, or 20%, whatever. But but actually it is a crazy interest. It is a crazy interest that people commit to pay when they spend more than they can afford. Because the bank says, we will lend you the money. If you don't pay it by the end of the month, by the end of the billing period, then we will charge you this interest rate. And a lot of people don't care to pay off their credit cards on time. So they end up paying that crazy interest. Also, when you use a credit card, there is such thing as a merchant fee. And usually it is about 4% on average. It can be 3.5, it can be 4.5. On average, let's say it is 4%. It is basically a processor fee. And when you do a transaction, for example, you swipe your card at a store and you're paying for something, you are not paying directly to the store. You are paying to a bank, which is a merchant in this setup. And this is a third party, and the bank takes the money out of your account and sends that money to the store. And basically for their services, they charge about 4%. Then there are different other terms applied to that. But basically, usually, when it comes to small purchases, it is the store that pays this 4% fee. However, when it comes to bigger expenses, usually that fee is pushed onto the payer, someone who pays for something. For example, if you ever purchased like big software products, expensive software products, they would suggest you, if you use credit cards, there is a fee on top of the actual cost of the software. Or for example, if you pay for rent using, property management companies, they would offer, most of them offer nowadays convenience of paying through a credit or debit card. By the way, debit cards usually charge a little bit less, but still they charge a significant fee for processing. But credit card fees is the most significant. So if your rent, let's say $2,500 a month on average, let's say nowadays, and you're paying 4% on top of it, and usually those companies won't pay that fee themselves. They would push it on to the person who chose to pay by a credit card. Then imagine how much money you are overspending. You end up paying hundreds of dollars extra, which you could have avoided if you cut a check to pay for your rent, or if you selected to use your bank account. It's called ACH transaction, when you can when you basically are entering your bank details, your routing number and things like that. And usually there is just a negligent fee for that, or there is no fee at all for doing that. So this is something that can be done to avoid those significant expenses, because someone has to pay the credit card fee, and it better be not you. Usually. Three? Okay, I think I misunderstood the switch. So basically, the idea would be to avoid using credit cards where possible. Use cash or use ACH or electronic payments through bank account instead. However, if you still decide to use credit card because of the points or because of the credit score, because everyone wants to have a good credit score, make sure that you pay it off every month. And most importantly, you put it on auto pay. And you make sure that it's paid off automatically. You know that on this date, for example, it's the 1st of the month or the 16th of the month, you have your payment. And make sure that you have enough in your bank account so that this payment goes through, that you don't have an NSF, which is a non-sufficient fee, right? And this would ensure that you live within your means. If you don't live within your means, that's a problem. That means that you can't afford those things that you have put on your credit card. Another interesting passage we can read in Proverbs chapter 21, it says, the plans of the diligent, again the word plans here, the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. This is a huge warning here. Everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. Have you heard about impulse buys? Impulse buys. Probably you heard about those things. This is when, just in simple words, usually unplanned and driven by a sudden desire or immediate gratification purchases. Purchases driven by those things. The most, the easiest example would be to say when you are at a store and you're going to cashier's desk, to the counter, you probably notice there are a lot of shelves on the way. And the shelves have lots of stuff on it, like toys, chewing gums, batteries, like multitude of different things. What is it for? What is it for? Is it for your convenience? Not exactly. It is to offer you a purchase which you didn't plan to make. So for example, you're standing in the line, you're waiting for your turn to pay for your purchases, and then you're looking at the shelves because there is like the shelves like on the both sides of you, there is nothing else to see, and you're like, oh, actually, chewing gum, new taste. Oh, let me try it. Or you have your little kid within who is waning, and you're like, okay, here is this toy. Okay, keep this toy. And it may be negligent, it may be $3, $5, $10, but for the store, or for you, if you look at the perspective, like in a year perspective, you spent a lot of money on this. And for the store, when they have hundreds of consumers going through the store, it's a lot of money, a lot of income or revenue. So this is basically something that you do impulse. You didn't come to the store to buy this chewing gum. You came to buy something else, but you ended up buying it because you got this impulse buy. There is another sales technique based on this very principle, which says, "Who is hasty comes only to poverty." Have you heard about sense of urgency? All salesmen, if there are any salesmen here, you will confirm that during those trainings, they are trained to. One of the techniques is to create a sense of urgency. And this is why when you're swiping through, I don't know, Amazon or any other application you're buying, you see the promotion here, like special price, discount, and then you have a timer sometimes attached to it, which says, ends in 3, 2, 1. You need to press the button. Someone wants you to press the button immediately because you will lose this discount. They want to create this sense of urgency. Or if you're buying something, they say, this promotion runs only till tomorrow. You need to buy it now. Do you really need it today? Probably not, but someone wants you to make the decision immediately because they're afraid that if you go back and if you sleep on it, probably you won't make that purchase. So this is something that we can read and we can learn from the scripture. Another problem and another technique is instant gratification. And this is something that Amazon has built their entire company on. They're using this desire to get instantly something that you need or something that you want. For example, before Amazon, you had to, either travel to a store to purchase something, or you had to buy it somewhere and then wait for 2 weeks until it is delivered, or maybe a month until it is delivered. Amazon decided to give this convenience to their buyers, to the consumer, and say, don't worry, just click the button, we will bring it to your doorsteps. It will be here in 2 days. Or now it is actually the next day, and I heard that even it can be done the same day delivery. Isn't it crazy? You're just clicking a button and then someone brings it to your doorstep, to your porch. And this creates this instant gratification. When you want it ASAP, you can't wait till next week. You need it now. And if we think about those things, a lot of things we don't need immediately. We can wait. But they create this instant gratification, and I'm not against Amazon, by the way. I use Amazon myself. But the question is, do we really need everything instantaneously? Do we really? The problem is that we're losing patience. Our kids are raising with the urge to get everything immediately, instantaneously. They are not grown. They are not brought up with the understanding that there is a waiting period for something. And when they have to wait for something, they get upset very easily. But when we read in the Bible, look in the Bible, James 5:7 says, "Be patient, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near." So he's warning us against this instant gratification. He says, you need to be patient. And the same comes to managing our financial resources. We need that patience and avoid those traps and avoid that to be able to live according to God's principles. So now, practical steps. Again, 5 practical steps, real quick about this second aspect. Use cash instead of plastic if you overspend. If you see that you can't control your expenses, then use cash. Cash helps feel the pain of spending, because when you're pulling out those bills from your wallet, those crying bills from your wallet, and you have to pay $257, it's a lot of money. And maybe you don't even have that much money in your wallet. Oh, that probably means you shouldn't buy it because you don't have it. But when you have plastic and you just swipe, it's very, very easy. There is no friction with that. So this is why it sometimes helps to avoid this frustration of overspending. Do not use credit cards when you are required to pay a fee, as we discussed. Cut up your credit cards if you can't live within your means. Make a rule that mortgage is the only acceptable debt. Pay off your debts ASAP. Again, this is something that just I heard from Dave Ramsey, and I really recommend using his examples or his principles that he's kind of preaching to everyone. And this would help you live according to what God wants and honor God through your financial resources. Avoid impulse financial decisions. Sleep on it before making hefty purchases or big purchases. If you're offered to buy a car or purchase a boat or something else, take some time, and maybe not just one day, take some time to think whether you really need it. And this would help us honor God. And the third aspect today about honoring God is we can honor God by being generous, because generosity is an act of worship. Friends, I want you to remember this. Generosity is an act of worship. And of course, when we talk about generosity, the main that comes to mind is we can be generous towards God, because He was generous for us. He is generous for us. He is giving everything for us. And it would be great if we can give back something, at least something. However, we can be generous to other people, to the poor. We can be generous to our friends. We can be generous to other people and bless them with our generosity. We just heard the sermon on hospitality, I believe last Sunday or 2 Sundays ago, on hospitality. Friends, being hospitable, this is not cheap. It is expensive. You need to take time to invite other people to your house. You need to buy something probably to offer them food. And we as Slavic people, we usually try to kind of to put together a really good table with food, right? So that tends to be expensive. And this is an act of generosity. And this is what we see in the Bible. And if I can circle back to the very first passage that we read, honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of your produce, then you will have those blessings that were listed there. Honor your Lord with your wealth and with the first fruit of your produce. We can talk about that more, but the main idea is that we should worship God through our finances as well. And in the Bible, we read that it's not just worshiping or giving Him something little or giving Him when you have, leftovers or something. The first fruits of all of your produce. And because it was the agricultural society, when everyone was a farmer or everyone was, kept livestock and things like that, everyone was living off of the things they produced on the earth. From the earth. And God says, you imagine a farmer, and Rob can probably relate to that because you are a farmer now, right? And imagine you put in so much effort, so much time and money into your crops, into, sowing seeds and taking care of that. And you've been waiting for half a year or for 9 months for that crop to be produced. And then you as a farmer, you want to, of course, try it. You want to use it. And God says, no. Take the first fruits and bring it to the Lord. This is your sacrifice. This is your giving. Isn't that important? Isn't that interesting? First Timothy 6:17 says as follows. As for the rich in the present age, this is Apostle Paul teaches a young pastor, Timothy. It appears there were rich people in the church at the time. And he says, as for the rich in the present age, charge them not to be haughty, not to set their hopes on the certainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. They are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they make their hold of that which is truly life. Imagine, he's talking and he says, charge those people not to set their hopes on their wealth, on their finance or on their resources they have, but to think about the eternal foundation which is in heaven. It's not something that you can buy for your money, but you can actually create the treasure in heaven, and this is the real foundation. You probably heard the expression that money can't buy happiness. I would disagree. If you believe that money can't buy happiness, that means you've never donated much enough. When you give much, you will have happiness in that. You will have joy when you see that God is working through your finances. God is blessing other people through you doing those things. And I'm thinking about this as about a channel of blessings that God has, like a pipe full of blessings that should throw on the earth, should flow on the earth, the blessings through this pipe. And God is looking for someone where to direct that, who will be the conductor of the blessings to other people. And he's looking for people, and he's trying to give the blessing, this pipe, to someone, and that person blocks the pipe. That person tries to keep everything to themselves. And God is like, no, let me turn it to someone else then, who will actually give it away, give to other people. That's how I that's how I think about those blessings. And I probably excuse me. And probably you're listening to me and you're thinking, well, that's good, Eugene, you're right. That's okay. But that's about wealthy people. That's not for me. I'm actually full in debt. That's not about me. This sermon is not for me. But actually you are wrong, because Jesus, when he was on the earth and when he was that one day at the temple, he saw that poor widow who gave everything she had, just 2 small copper coins, and she put that in the treasury box. And Jesus said, she gave more than anyone else who gave into the offering box. Why? Because she gave everything she had. And she didn't have millions. She didn't have much. She gave everything she had. So it appears that this poor widow was extremely generous. We are not talking about an absolute number of money, $1,000 or $10,000, how much we should give. We are talking about the relationship to how much we get, to how much we have. And this is God. And God gives us wisdom to direct our resources, to spend our resources accordingly. So the Apostle Paul says like this about this, 2 Corinthians, that's a famous passage. The point is this, says Apostle Paul, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things at all times, you may abound in every good work. Friends, the only thing I can say is that the main idea of this text sounds to me like God wants us to be generous in giving so you do not become poor. This is the main idea here, and we don't have much time to go into it, but I just want to repeat it. God wants you to be generous in giving so you don't become poor. This is exactly what this passage says. If we want to be generous, one may ask, how much? Where is the definition of generosity? And I can tell you there is no good number in that generosity, in your generosity, because it's only between you and God. However, as a church, we believe that at least 10%, at least a tithe amount is something that, because we see in the Bible, we see that this is a really good example. Because when we start looking into different things and different approaches, we see that if we just start looking at our own understanding or take our own assumptions, you can veer off in a big way somewhere else. So it's important to stay in or follow the biblical guidelines. And maybe someone thinks that, well, this was Moses' law and this was during the Old Testament. I want to disappoint you. This was the principle of giving, 10% given, was before the Mosaic law. It was much earlier. God gave us much earlier, so that principle, no one canceled that principle. So let's talk about practical steps for this aspect. And this is, again, 5 practical aspects. Realize that our true wealth is in heaven. It's not enough to know about that. Realize, comprehend it, that our true wealth is in heaven. Whatever we have on the earth, this is just temporarily. It's passing. It shall pass. Avoid wrong values. Have the Lord as the center of your life, not your financial prosperity. Because if your value is your financial prosperity, I can tell you, you will likely achieve it. You will be very prosperous. You will be wealthy. But you likely will lose your relationship with God. You will likely lose your family. You will lose your kids because you will be working 3 jobs or maybe 4 jobs or whatever. You will be working 80 hours a week to make wealth, to create this wealth, and good chances you will achieve it. America is the land of opportunities, as we know. You can work as long as you want. And friends, this will destroy your relationship with God if your values are in the wrong place. Number 3, make giving a regular and cheerful process. As we read, God loves a cheerful giver. If you didn't donate before, make a donation, make a giving, or invite people to your house and show them your generosity. Or give to the church, because as we heard today from Yarrow, we are not given to the church, we are given through the church, because we just want to be an instrument in God's work, in God's hands, and we can do this. And if you gave, or maybe you donated as much as you never donated, let's say $1,000, share it with your family, share it with your kids, and say, hey, God blessed us enough so that we donated as much as an X amount of dollars. Let's go to celebrate. Let's go buy, ice cream, or go to a restaurant and celebrate it. God loves a cheerful giver, when someone gives and doesn't regret about that giving. And we can bless, as we talked, it's not only blessing or giving to God through the church, it's also blessing the poor or giving to other people. And when we look at biblical principles, I can tell you that God promised His blessings in the Bible when we are generous, when we follow the financial principles outlined in the Bible. And I was preaching about giving, not exactly about this, but about giving last year, and I said that make a promise. Start giving Bogu at least your 10% of your income, and test God. Make a promise to do that within a year. And if you don't see a blessing in your life, if you don't see that God is blessing you in some way for your donations, stop giving completely. Don't do it at all. But God is truthful. God does what He promises to do. So, because He gave Himself for us. And we read in the Bible, we read that He spent Himself completely. In my own words, if I paraphrase what is written, He gave Himself away completely to save us. He had everything in heaven. He had all the throne, all the angels, all the glory of heaven. And He came to earth to save us. He was very generous. He was extremely generous to the point that He didn't spend 10% of Himself. He didn't spend even 50% of Himself. He spent Himself completely. And this is why when we read in the Bible and we look at those principles, we understand that how can we pay back? How can we do something for God? Principle number 4, give first and then spend the rest. First fruits of all of your produce. Remember what we read. Give first and then spend the rest. And number 5, I would say it is impossible to worship God without giving. Imagine a husband who says to his wife that he loves her. If you, as a husband, tell your wife you love her, you would do everything for her. She is the world to you, but you don't give her your salary. You don't give your family your income. You don't share your income with your family. How would that be? How would that look like? Would those words mean anything? And sometimes that happens with us. We are such great singers. We come to the church, or we can sing in our car. We praise the Lord just with our lips, the service of the lips. What about living of the life that worships God? What about being generous to worship God? What about sharing the word of salvation with other people as a matter of worshiping God? We can do this, and this is what God has called us for. Friends, God gave Himself up for us. What can we do in return? Maybe you're still thinking whether I need to come to God. Maybe this is for me, maybe this is not for me. Believe me, this sermon is not about money. This sermon is about us applying God's principle in our lives so that we can live the better life that God has created for us. And if you're still not with God, you can come to Him today. You can make this decision today and say, God, you sacrificed yourself completely for me. It wasn't just a part of you. You gave yourself up completely to save me. Please accept me. I want to live according to your principles. I want to be with you in your kingdom. May God bless you. Let's stand up and pray.